Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. It's really great to see lots of you join this afternoon. So we're just going to wait a couple more minutes and then hopefully we can start. We're just going to wait for a few more people to join. Okay, I think we'll get started. So I just want to start by saying thank you very much for joining this afternoon for my mark making workshop. If you haven't already met me at school before, my name is Alyssa Hind and I'm a nursery teacher at Harrow Bangkok in the Early Years Centre. It's really nice for you to join this afternoon for my mark making workshop. So this workshop will be about the importance of mark making in the early years. With a specific focus on nursery, but of course this will be relevant and appropriate for pre-nursery parents and reception parents as well. So this workshop will outline the importance of our children engaging in mark making, why it's really important, and it will discuss the stages of emergent writing and how our setting inspires and encourages children to make marks in provision. So I'll talk about the opportunities that we provide in nursery and across the early years to support mark making. And at the end, I'll provide some ideas for activities that you could do at home with your child. So hopefully you can take away a really fun activity that you might want to try out with your child at home to support their mark making and your child's learning in mark making in the early years. Okay, so this workshop will have a practical element to it. Feel free to join in if you would like to. So if I could ask you to have a pen or a pencil or any chalks that you might be able to find in your home and just put them to a side for later in the workshop, and then a piece of paper. And if you can have access to a smooth surface as well, so you can join in with doing some mark making with me, and a space as well that you can move your body in. And we're doing that a little bit later in the workshop. So I'll just give you a minute or two to prepare that, and then we'll get started. So it can be any writing tool, a pen, a pencil, or chalks, and you might want to borrow a writing tool from your child at home. Go and have a look, see what you can find, just something that you can make marks with. Okay, brilliant, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start by explaining what mark making is. So mark making is basically what those words say. It's making marks, and it really is making marks with anything. Okay, so fingers, sticks, crayons, pens, paintbrushes, the list is endless. Okay, chunky chalks, it doesn't have to be a pencil or a pen. They can, a child and a baby can make marks with all those things that I have just listed. And it really is about the process of making as many marks as possible. So it's really getting children to engage in the process of making as many marks as possible in as many different ways as possible. And it's really important to know that it's not about just picking up a pencil. It's about so much more than that, and it's learning the letter shapes and the sounds and then being able to pick up a pencil. So it is a really long process, and this can be explored with lots of different writing tools. Okay, so what I would like to share with you first is going into a little bit of detail about the developmental stages of mark making. So there's actually 4 stages to mark making. And like I said before, it's a process. So we know that children develop at all different rates. So maybe you'll be able to think about where your child might be at the moment in terms of their mark making from the descriptions that I'm going to give next. So the first stage of mark making is spontaneous mark making. And this happens when at the beginning of a child's life, so when they're a baby. So this mark making actually starts in a high chair, when a child's in a high chair and they're experimenting with the textures of their food, and when they're using their senses around them. to make sense of the world, and when they're beginning to control their body as well. So we call this stage the spontaneous mark making stage, but sometimes it's referred to as the scribble stage. So when babies start to scribble on paper, they don't know they're doing it, but they're doing that action, they're making scribbles, and they're being spontaneous with their mark making. Okay, and the second stage is called the exploratory mark making stage. So this is when a child is purposefully making marks, so they're starting to understand their actions, and that the action of making marks, they're understanding that that their action makes they can see that their action is making marks. Okay, so, and this is where their gross motor skills are developing as well, from when they were a baby, and they start to explore a range of different marks. So lines and circles, across pages, different directions. It really is exploratory. Stage 3 is called meaningful mark making. So they're making marks, but they're telling you what those marks are. So they're starting to realize that marks can represent, and it can represent different feelings. They can tell people about their marks, and also they're making a range of shapes with their marks as well, and they're doing this with some control. And the last stage is emergent writing. So this is really straightforward. It's the act of writing. So they're holding a pen or a pencil, they're forming letter shapes, so they're forming letters and numerals, and they understand that words are made up of letters. Okay, and they have a purpose to write as well. For example, they might choose to write a letter to mummy or daddy, and they're doing it because they want to write a list of things that they want for their birthday. There's a purpose for their writing. Okay, so hopefully I've described just in a little bit of detail there each stage of mark making, and maybe you, whilst I was explaining that, you could kind of pinpoint where your child might be at the moment in terms of their mark making. And this really is a process, and you know, children work through these stages at different rates. Okay, so and that's normal. So I'm going to go into talking about how we support mark making at Harrow now. So we really start as early as teachers from getting to know the children and what their interests are. And children only decide to start writing because they have a motivation to write, and that has to link to their own interests. So at Harrow, we really tune into the children and find out what their interests are by observing a child, getting to know everything about them, and then using that knowledge of what their interests are to create exciting and purposeful opportunities for them to mark make and then eventually write. So again, it's a process. It's really starting off with what is that child interested in, and then using their interests to kind of entice them into mark making, exploring marks. And I'm going to share with you some pictures of how we plan for provision, for mark making provision in our in nursery specifically, because that's where I teach in Harrow, and how we support mark making, so how we support this area of the child's learning in nursery at Harrow. So I've got a few pictures here, and there are a range of activities that we set up in provision to encourage the children to make marks in a variety of ways. And I think this is just brilliant because the list really is endless in terms of ideas for mark making. We set up provision indoor and outdoor to support mark making. So as you can see, we've got sensory mark making opportunities. So we set them inside and outside too. We've got round spot trays, we call them, with sand in there, or there could be rice, and they're encouraged to make marks with their hands. So these children here are making marks with their hands. They may even have a go with paintbrushes, making marks, making lots of letter shapes in there. They might be encouraged by adults to make the marks, or they might just be exploring from their own interests and that kind of thing. And also through paint, we can see in the outdoor area, this little boy here is using the rollers. So he's actually doing mark making to gross motor. He's improving his gross motor here by making marks with the rollers outside. We have long rolls of paper, and the children really enjoy writing on that. You know, lying down and being able to access their mark making that way instead of sat at a table. And this little boy here is exploring the paint by rolling, making marks up and down with the paint. And also children enjoy joining together and mark making on whiteboards and kind of imitating what the teacher does, writing on whiteboards and chalkboards. They really enjoy that too. And we also like to have mark making on our interactive whiteboards as well. So we often keep our whiteboards up on the screen so the children can use the pens or their fingers to make marks on there, and we encourage them to do it through that medium as well. Okay, so lots of different ways that we encourage children to make marks in the early year, in nursery. Okay, so we have started a new approach to mark making in nursery. We've been trialing it, and it's called Right Dance. So I'm going to talk to you now a bit about what Right Dance is. So Right Dance includes music, songs and suggested movements to encourage children to make marks, and then it will essentially help them with their handwriting and being able to write at the end. So it really starts with learning the gross motor movements first. So the movement helps to make the shapes they will eventually need to write in their given language. And then the movement, so it starts with gross motor movements, and they focus on different letter shapes. So each principle is linked to a letter shape. So the movements focus on rounded shapes, circles, straight lines and angles, which are essentially the skills to write alphabet letters and numerals. And what Right Dance essentially does is allow children to write letter shapes, and they're understanding why they're doing it. And it gives meaning to their marks as well, because they're understanding that what they're doing, the marks that they're making, are letter shapes that they will then go on to be able to write. And they have we've been trialing it in nursery, and they've really been enjoying it, and we've actually seen them really developing their gross motor movements, being really confident with making big gross motor movements, and then taking it into the classroom and then practicing their fine motor movements. So doing the same actions, but doing it with a writing tool in their hand, along with the songs as well. So it's really kind of developing in all areas of their learning, not just their writing and their physical development, but also their rhythm and listening to music as well. So it helps with their listening skills and their expressiveness and imaginativeness as well. So I won't go into too much detail about each area of each principle, of Right Dance, but each principle, there are 7 principles, and it starts with straight lines, and it moves on to rounded shapes, and then angles, directions, the size of letters, and then crossing the midline. So for example, principle 1 is straight lines, and what's important to remember about Right Dance is that the music is in direct correlation to what action it is. So the actions and the music link, so there has to be a strong rhythm for when the children are learning straight lines, and the actions linked to making straight lines. So it starts with learning the gross motor movements, and then they take that into the fine motor movements. So they do exactly the same movements when they come to doing the fine motor, but it starts with learning the song and doing the gross motor movements with it first, and then they will practice the gross motor movements. And it depends on the children that you have, and in terms of when you move on to doing the gross motor movements, but we'll start with the gross motor movements first, and then if they grasp it quite quickly, then the next session you would move on to the gross motor movements. So I'm showing with you now some pictures of the children in nursery engaging in right dance so far. So you can see on the pictures, there's the children in our movement room where they've been learning the movements first of all in a big space. And they have the music up on the big screen, and they can join in as a big group. For example, you can see them marching along, making straight lines, and then the activities are then set up in the classroom in the next session to practice the fine motor movements. And this might also then be linked to art activities that we do, or sensory activities as well, so they can develop it further. So those opportunities are then set up so they can develop those skills after that, after learning the gross motor movements. And they have really, really enjoyed doing this at school, and it's something that they've really, you know, it's their skills that they've really developed in as well. So I'm going to share with you an example of the right dance now. So the children started, so this is the first principle of right dance. So it's making straight line letter formations. So I'm going to share with you a video of the children in action, engaging in the fine motor movements. So it's important to note that the children had already learnt the gross motor movements before. So this was then taken into the classroom to complete, to have a go and explore the fine motor movements. So making lines in all different directions with chunky chalks, and they were going across the paper, up and down, and they were doing that together with along to the music as well. So it was the same music used for the gross motor movements, and then used again for the fine motor movements. So it was the same song, and they were singing along to the song as well whilst they were mark making. So I'm going to share that with you now. Okay, so it's just a short clip, but in that clip, hopefully you saw there, the children weren't just using one hand, they were using both hands, they were going up and down. So the gross motor movements that they had learned, they were making those straight lines with their body, but now they're doing it on the paper, and they're making those straight lines on the paper. So it's kind of exposing them to the letter shapes that are straight lines. And the music was chosen because it had a strong rhythm and a beat. And then they moved on to their fine motor skills and made straight line marks with chunky chalks in time to the music. So that is just a kind of short summary of what right dance is and how we've been trialing it in nursery so far. So we're going to now have a go. So at the beginning of the workshop, I said that we were going to have a go ourselves. So if you would like to have a go, join in, that would be really great to see you having the go today. We're going to start with doing exactly what I've just showed you, showed a clip of the children doing. So we're going to focus on the straight lines today. So we're going to have a go at making the gross motor movements. We're going to do some marching, and then we're going to move on and just do some some fine motor movements on our paper with whatever writing tool you chose. So I'm going to share the clip with you now. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. So if you can find a space to move in, that would be fantastic. Make sure there's nothing else around you, and we're going to join in. We're going to join in with me. So just copy what I'm doing, and see if you can do the movements in time to the music, thinking about making straight lines with your body. Okay, so we're going to do that first. So I'm going to find a space. So we're going to start by marching in the spot.
Oh, the grand old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men.
Really straight
lines.
He marched them up
To the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. And when they were up, they were up. And when they were down, they were down. And when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down.
Move our arms in straight line.
With a 1, 2, 3, 4 drilling their drill. Oh, the grand old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, then he marched them down again. And when they were up, they were up. And when they were down, they were down. And when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down.
Trying to start. Okay, so thank you very much if you joined in there with the actions. Hopefully you had a go there just to see what it felt like making those lines with your body. So that is essentially what we would do with the children. We might have them marching around, making lines, following each other around. Just everything is focused on making lines and those shapes specifically with your body, and then you would move on to the next letter shape once the children had grasped the straight lines, and you would be telling the children that that's what you're making lines, straight lines with your body. Okay, so we're now going to have a go doing the straight lines on our piece of paper. So if you do have more than one writing tool, you can use both, and you can write with both of your hands. And so I don't know if you noticed in the video, the children had two chalks in their hand and they were going up and down, making those straight line formations. So we're going to just do just a short just a short amount of time. We're just going to go up and down if you want on a smooth surface on your paper, just for a couple of seconds, just to get an idea of what the children would be doing. So I'm going to play the music again, just a short snippet, and then as you hear the music, you're going to go up and down on your paper. You might go side to side, but you're only making lines. Okay. So I'm just going to share that slide again. There we go. It's time for the music. Keep going up and down. Side. Covering your paper with lines. Angles up and down.
And when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down.
Trying to keep in time to the music as well. Okay, so hopefully you can just take a look now at your paper, and you should have lots of different marks on your paper, lots of lines there in lots of different directions. Okay, so thank you very much for joining in with that practical element of the workshop. Hopefully you get an idea of what right dance is and how it will then link to handwriting and essentially then children learning to write. Okay, so this last part of the workshop is going to talk about some ideas that you might want to do at home with your child. So I have described already some activities that we set up in provision, that we plan for in nursery, linked to mark making. So there's some ideas that I thought that you might want to try out at home with your child to explore mark making at home. And it's really important to know that children need hundreds of experience of making marks before you focus on pencil and paper. So it's just as important to make sure that your child is engaging in sensory activities where they can make marks, painting, lots of different ways that you can lots of different ways that children can make marks. Okay, so here are a few fun ideas that you could do at home with your child. So the first one is called laminated faces. So this is something that I've done in school with the children. They have really enjoyed it, it's called, so there are a few things that you'll need for this. So one of them is a digital camera, a printer, a laminator. Don't worry if you don't have a laminator at home, you don't have to laminate it. It's not essential, but it would mean that you can rub off any marks that your child has made and then use it again, and a dry white marker pen as well. So what you do first is take a head and shoulder photograph of your child, or if you already have one, then that's great. You would blow it up A4 size, okay, and then print the photograph, laminate it if you do have a laminator at home, and then you let the children draw on their own faces or the faces of their friends using dry white markers. So as you can see in this picture, the children really think it's great fun just drawing on glasses or beards or extra hair. They really think it's fun and it's engaging. So there's a high level of engagement with this activity. This is what I found from doing it in the classroom, and the children always find it funny to be able to graffiti themselves or their friends as well. So you could also have a picture of your child with their friends as well, so that you don't just do their own, but they can mark make on their pictures with their friends as well. And this is a picture taken from a class where they've been doing it, and then they've had a go at taking turns mark making on their friends' faces. So that's just something really fun and easy to do at home. And then another activity is called mark making mirror. So what you would need is access to some mirrors. Don't worry if you don't want your child to use glass mirrors. You might be able to find some plastic mirrored mirrors that you can use instead. And then you need a selection of substances, so example, paint, shaving foam, soap, whiteboard markers, sand, coffee granules, anything like that. And mark making tools such as paintbrushes, sticks, sponges and fingers, and a digital camera again, or you could just use your phone. And what you essentially do is place your mirror on a surface, okay, so horizontally, or if you have a tray, you could arrange them around the tray, and then you'd empty your chosen substance onto the mirror. So you might put, for example, the coffee granules onto the mirror, and then you'd encourage the children to use their fingers or tools to create shapes and patterns. So essentially they're mark making onto the mirrors, and they really enjoy this process because they can see themselves making the marks. And the fact that their mark making is reflected in the mirror will help them with their control and their formation. And it makes a great talking point as well. We know how much children love looking at themselves in the mirror, and actually it creates that conversation. They like seeing themselves writing, so you can ask those questions, or what is it you're writing about, and it creates that purposeful and that meaning, gives meaning to what they're writing as well, what they're mark making. Okay, and then you might also take a photograph at the end as well, so the children can remember what they've been making marks of. So that's another fun activity that you might want to do at home. And the last one I've got, this is a really great and fun activity called marshmallow paint. And this is a really fun sensory activity, mark making activity that you can do. So what you would need is access to a microwave, 1 cup of marshmallows, some water, some golden syrup to really make the texture sticky, paint pots or containers, and some food colouring. So what you do is you put 1 cup of marshmallow into a microwave, and then you would microwave the marshmallows, and you add the water in, give it a stir, then you put it back into the microwave. Then when it comes out the microwave, you would add the golden syrup and you stir it, and then you microwave it for the last time, and then you take it out the microwave, and then you let the mixture cool and then separate out into your paint pots. And then you'd add the food colouring, and then you let your children get mark making, and remind them that the mixture is not for eating. Okay, so just talking to them about the fact that the marshmallows are for mark making and they're not for eating. And you can see in this picture, these children have been having lots of fun with their hands, making lots of different shapes, up and down, side to side, round and round, making lots of different formations. And the children can observe lots of science in this as well. So there's lots of different areas of learning in this activity. And the paint also has a unique texture as well. So you can talk about what the texture is like. And it also adds another dimension to the mark making as well. So lots of different areas to their learning there. Okay, so hopefully you can take an idea from what I've suggested today in the workshop and have a go with one of these activities at home. Or you might want to have a go with doing some write dance at home as well. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this useful today, the information about mark making, and feel confident to try out one of these mark making ideas with your child at home. If you do have any questions, of course, I'm happy to answer any of those questions, so you could just pop them in the chat. Or these slides and this recording today will be available on the school on our school website, so you can have access again to that if you want to check any information or look at it again. So thank you very much for joining. It was wonderful to see you this afternoon, and have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.